our second information forum meeting. I shall open with a karakia. Tua ki runga tia, ki raro, tua ki rautou, tua ki waho, tua tātou te tangata, ki te kaupapa o te huinei, ki te kaupapa o te ranginei, muri ora ki a tātou katoa, bind above, bind below, bind within, bind beyond, bind us, the people, to the purpose of our meeting, to the purpose of this day, breathe life into all of us. Just a special welcome. We have a couple of community board members here today. So welcome Henry from Golden Bay and David from Motueka. In this forum, we use our first names. We are dropping the councillor apart so that everybody is aware. And also today is not a workshop, it is a forum. So you're able to ask questions, points of clarification, and if there are any action points that come out of today's agendas, the staff will follow those up with us. Okay, so formally I have to do apologies. So we have an apology for Dave Woods, he's away on his training, and an apology for lateness for Tim, he's doing other business currently. Do I have someone to...
Mark Hume.
Sorry?
And Mark Hume.
And Mark Hume. Have I had an apology from Mark? We will note.
You're getting one right now.
Oh, right. Okay, and apologies from Mark Hume. Any others that I've missed? Mindful that we do have Mark Greening, Paul Morgan. Oh, Paul Morgan, you're up there twice. How's your tech system working? Was that ours?
It's just double vision.
Double vision. Okay, do I have a mover for those apologies, please? Thank you, Joe, and seconded by Timu. Oh, Timo even. Gosh, that's not a good start, is it? All in favour? Aye. Passed. Thank you. The other thing that we're going to have to do today is reshuffle the order of our agenda. Your item 4.2 Environment Policy Quarterly Activity Report will be probably the last report for today instead of the second, due to Barry being tied up with things with Tim. So we will start. First of all, I'd like to welcome Joe and his team. Page 4 on your agenda, councillors. Do you have a presentation waiting to come up, Joe? Is that what the look's for?
That's what the look across is. I can always forward it directly to a different email address, but Morena team. So my name is Joe, and on paper, I have the privilege of managing the emergency management team across the road. In reality, they are a great team that kindly manage me. And Riley here, to my right, would you like to introduce yourself?
Morena Koto. I'm Riley Peterson. I actually used to be managed by Joe, but now I work for Tasman District Council. I'm the Recovery Operations Manager. So I'll talk a little bit more about my role further on, but yeah, I'm part of the Tasman team now.
Yes, Riley had a lucky escape from our team. Team, we are here for you. So please feel free to ask questions. We have got a presentation lined up that's just a bit of a 101 in relation to civil defence emergency management in our region. At the end, I have a pack that you can take away, and it's just got some documentation in around elected members, considerations before, during and after an emergency, some top tips, some bits and pieces. So please don't feel you have to scribble away. And as many of you know, I'm always on the end of a phone any time of day. So if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask post meeting. Cool. Does that sound about right? Brilliant. Okay, so I'm assuming you can see the screen. Yes, there we go. So first slide, I'll press this button. There we go. This presentation has been the first time it has been pulled together with both the National Emergency Management Agency and our region. We're trying to get standardisation across the country when we're presenting to our elected members. So please bear with me as I step through some of the slides, but some of them will have that national take to them. This slide is just showing that New Zealand's had a busy few years, and the bit I really look at is in the middle there where there's nothing. You've got 2014. My eyesight is going. Riley will tell me that's old age, but thank you. And a bit there from 2006 to 2014, compared to the bit where you go 2015 to 2024, there's a substantial difference in the number of events we're having, really. Each box just indicates the number of events that, the number of days that has been in a state of local emergency. It's a changing landscape. And here again, it's just showing the type of activities that we're having. So for our region, specifically, the most frequent event that we have is flooding. The most devastating would be an earthquake scenario, followed by tsunami. Nelson Tasman responses, here you go. This is just key responses for within our region. And you'll hear the messaging that we go out with. It's not a case of if there's an emergency, it's a case of when there's an emergency. And this really depicts that. And over the last 15 years, 14, 15 years, we've had 7 or 8 states of local emergency in our region. So it's not, I think that's 1 every 2 years. And I myself, when we're going out talking to our members of our community or our businesses, I'm encountering an increasing number of people that have personally been impacted by emergency events, either their business or their wider farm out or their direct household themselves. So definition of emergency under the Act is up there on the screen. What we're really just trying to highlight is it's not just weather, although that's our most frequent event. We've had recently suspicious packages up by the Rutherford. We've got fuel at the moment, just jumped out of a briefing on fuel to attend this one. And we've had hailstorms, there's earthquakes, there's pandemics, there's rural fires. There's a whole nature of things. It's not just around weather-related activity. So we're trying to, and we'll cover off later on, across the 4 R's of reduction, readiness, response and recovery, be able to prepare for, respond and recover from those hazards, as well as where possible, mitigate them happening in the first place. But it's a multi-agency, multi-partner approach. So legislative responsibilities. And apologies team, I've recently had some braces off, so I'm just trying to grasp some of the words here as you're hearing me struggling. So please accept my apologies for that. This slide's just saying, look, council specifically have responsibilities under various legislation. I'm going to go into the top one in a moment to mitigate, manage hazards, plan and prepare for emergencies. And that top one, the Civil Defence Emergency Management Act, that's the one that is key in my mandate at the moment. It is actually, there's a new EM bill that's just been out for consultation. They're looking to get royal assent by the end of this government's term, current term, which is sort of looking to do around October time. But that's just a watching brief at the moment. However, the main intent doesn't change. And Riley, please feel free to chip in if required. The main intent doesn't change. And that is specifically around the local authority must plan and provide for civil defence emergency management within its district. And it also must ensure that it's able to function to its fullest possible extent during and after an emergency. Cool. So a bit about our structure. So at the top, we always put community. Community, everything we do should have community at the centre. Is the work we're doing going to benefit the people that are adversely impacted from events? Then we have a regional lens there in the middle, which is our office and the 2 councils. We work across both Nelson City and Tasman District Council, and we try and also have a good partnership across Te Tauihu with Marlborough District Council. And then there's the National Emergency Management Agency that supports us. That middle section there is called a CDEM group. It's also got representation from police, fire, ambulance, iwi, MSD, so on and so forth. And there are 16 of those around the country, so we form one of them. And here's an example of some of our partners and stakeholders. lifelines at the bottom there, they are referred to as lifeline utilities or critical infrastructure. They're things such as telecommunications, roads, water, power, fast, or potentially in the future, fast-moving consumable goods and petrol. But also potentially in the future, it would be key intel or data streams such as hydrological services that give us the picture and allow us to make informed decisions. And here is the section of the legislation, section 17, that spells out our group's function around identifying, assessing and managing hazards, consulting and communicating about risks, and we tie in closely with our two councils there, identifying and implementing cost-effective risk reduction strategies, making sure we've got people to respond, and both our councils kindly put forward a whole heap of people to support us, although we can always do with more, and maintaining services and information. So our structure in response, we have the Group Emergency Operations Centre. I can just see it there with the wooden slats down the outside. It's a stone's throw away. If you're walking past, please don't hesitate to drop in. And the doors open particularly quickly if you bring home baking. But yeah, please don't hesitate to be familiar with the place. It's always better to do that before an emergency occurs, so you know the lay of the land. That is a regional, what we would call as the regional EOC, Emergency Operations Centre. If required, we've got other local emergency operations centre positioned in places that are at risk of isolation, that have a comparatively sizable population in Golden Bay, so Takaka, Murchison and Nelson Lakes, St Arnaud. They are resourced by largely volunteers that have had the appropriate vetting and a level of training, and under a situation where they cannot communicate with the building across the road, such as an earthquake scenario, the local controller there does have some delegated authority to act and make some decisions using the powers under the Act, if required. Outside of there, we've got a number of community groups that we're trying to promote and increase that can also feed in, because the first line of defence is the community. There is just New Zealand Inc. does not have enough responders, police, fire, ambulance, health, us, to be able to respond. Here's our BAU policy structure. So at the bottom of this chart, you've got our group office. There's 5.5 of us across the way in terms of FTE resource. Then 3 times per annum, we have a number of subsidiary committees. That's the next yellow line up. And they report to what's called the Coordinating Executive Group. That's a strategic body chaired by the council CEs, alternates on a calendar year, and attended by their equivalents from MSD, Health, iwi, Police, Fire, AMBO, et al. And then they in turn report to a governance group called the CDEM Group, and that is the members of that are the mayors. It's also attended by the deputy mayors and the council chief executives. So that policy structure there sets our work programme, our budgets, and so on and so forth. So the 4 R's to emergency management. I've mentioned these before. I'm just about to step through and just articulate what each one does very briefly and your role within that. Before I do, through the chair, it might be a good point just to say, hey, I've done a bit of talking. Has anyone got any initial questions? There will be a time for questions at the end as well. But
I'll start with Mike.
Thank you. Oh, I can't call you Madam Chair. Thank you, Trindy. Joe, through my home life, I'm involved with pre-emergency management. My wife is very into sorting something out for my poor, which is before it's a local emergency. Are you going to talk about that as part of your scheme, or is this separate to emergency management?
no, apologies, just the actual specifics around your question around planning in a community area.
Yeah, so it's pre-civil emergency. It's a local emergency when she's looking at setting up the Mapua Hall so the locals can go there before you declares a major emergency?
Yeah, so good question. So we have this initiative called Community Emergency Preparedness Planning. That is where anyone in the community, and when we say community, it doesn't have to be a geographic community. It can be a demographic community or a religious community, can contact our office and say, hey, we'd like to do some preparedness planning ahead of time. What we then do is work with our partnering agencies and say, hey, is anyone aware of any overlaps here with planning that they're undertaking? If there's not, they can download a template for undertaking community planning and a guide on to how to do that. It's relatively straightforward. It's essentially saying, hey, within our community, what are the hazards that we face? What are the important things to us? Because we can look in from Richmond and be going, oh, we need to get that road open. But to them, it's getting the bridge open to the local Foursquare or something. It's also identifying where displaced persons within that community can go if they cannot go home, and who are some key community contacts within that community that would, firstly, open up and operate that welfare type arrangement, but also that we could liaise with if needs be. There's an appendix to that plan that they send to us that has a summary of it. And that means that the intent moving forwards is we'd have a picture a lever arch file in the situation where we have sustained power outage, always plan for the worst. We'd have a sheet from each of those communities, and if needs be, we'd know their points of contact, what they're trying to do, where they're trying to set up, and their communication methodologies available to them that we can try and leverage. So yes, any community that's interested, they can take that on themselves. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, John. I've got a few. Can we try and keep them as short and succinct as possible? Thanks, John.
In particular, I'll talk about the Tapawera community. In the recent floods, they had no facility at all, and they were trying to operate out of a building that was underwater, basically. Have you got any money? I mean, in terms of, what's your funding line? Is it from central government?
Funding primarily comes from across both councils. We do get a bit from central government, but that's largely for training. Yeah. So you're not. I mean, it's an obvious question, but remiss of me not to ask, because the Tapawera community hasn't got a facility, and they're quite spooked by what happened over the winter. But thank you. It's pretty simple. Yeah, no, an understanding. And we've been working with the Tapawera community since May 2010, when they had a lot of slash that went through their properties. The one key point of doing that community emergency preparedness planning is that we need members of the community that are happy, have the capacity and the motivation to lean in to help support us with the planning. We have now got that within Tapawera. One thing you've identified is that the building stock there isn't really a good option. And that's one of the challenges we have to work through with the community.
Timo?
Perfect. Hi. I do recognise that or realise that your role is really limited, I suspect, to the acute emergency when it happens. So in a way, you're kind of acting as the ambulance when something's gone horribly wrong. But as we can see up there, part of your learnings will be in reduction and trying to remove risk from our communities. So with each emergency that you're dealing with, I suspect that you'll have some learnings. Do those feed back into our longer term planning processes to try and avoid these same risks in the future?
Thank you for the question. And remiss of me, sorry, how much time have I got for this session?
Probably over time now, but anyway, short, succinct.
Right, understood. So great question. And in fact, the new bill that's just gone through all submissions has a real focus on reduction and mitigating our hazards. And Riley might have some commentary to that. In short, at a real tactical level, yes, every event that we have, we do a debrief, a multi-agency debrief, multi-partner debrief. Actions from those go into a corrective action plan. At least once per annum, we review that and feed in what we can to our work programme, which gets signed off by that coordinating executive group. I sit here though, and I'm conscious that on that work programme, there's in excess of 500 line items, of which we're only addressing about 240 of them. So there's over half that we are currently labelled unassigned, and we just have to go through a priority matrix to do that. We are heavily focused on the readiness aspect at the moment and have been for some time. And we are aware there's wider implications. A lot of this comes down to resourcing, and I do not envy the position of our chief executives because I talk to them quite frequently. And if we look at the EM bill, that's a proposed local government NZ says that's a proposed $84.2 million implication on local authorities over the next 4 years. So I'm there saying, hey, we are one of the lowest resource CDM groups in the country, but I completely appreciate that we're only one slither of the wider operation. So I do not envy their position as we try and navigate how to work more effectively. It's not all about our office, though. We do need to work closer with our other partners and agencies to see how we can just get that greater collaboration. And there is room for improvement, hence what the legislation is trying to do.
So I have a couple more questions, but I guess the opening of today's information was really around the role that we play as elected members in the emergency. So a lot of what we're covering is a bigger picture stuff, as opposed to Joe and his team came today with Riley to share what the role is for us as elected members. So you might want to rethink some of your questions. I've also just spoken to John about whether we couldn't actually do an on-site visit at some stage, particularly for the new councillors and for anyone else who has the capacity to actually have a look at what it looks like over there and probably ask some of these questions that are outside of today's scope of what is our role of an elected member in the case of an emergency.
Brilliant, thank you. And great point, because John is kindly a group controller for us. Richard's a group recovery manager. Riley is highly skilled in the recovery and the welfare space. So there's a lot of other resource here that can feed into that sort of setting. So I'll just very quickly blitz through this aspect here. And
I've just got 2 more questions that will follow when you finished your last little bit. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. So reduction, here you go. You've probably heard this before. Every dollar spent on reduction saves between $4 and $13 in response, depending on which study or country you're looking at the doctrine from. How elected members can support reduction. So support funding programs, council's decision making and initiatives that increase resilience. That's going to be an increasing term, resilience, as we move forwards with this new legislation. And again, I'm very conscious that I can advocate this, but I only have to look at one aspect of your whole operation. So conscious of that. Readiness. So it's really important to know that you already play a key role in your communities day in, day out. And that role is the same in an emergency, if not heightened. Those structures, those mechanisms are still there. They're the same, but it's a heightened scenario. And I know that some elected members around the table have lots of experience in that setting. So please support your CDAM group to plan and prepare and advocate to your community that they undertake some community level planning, taking an interest in your council's business continuity planning arrangements, but also how responses flow out and promote and encourage preparation, as I've mentioned. In the response phase, you can support by keeping your controllers informed of escalating issues within your community. That's primarily, and it's articulated in these packs, through our public information manager role. So Chris Chokes from Tasman District Council, Paul Shattuck from Nelson City Council and team, and sometimes we have external support staff that come in. They play a public information manager role. They can be a key point of contact for you in conjunction with the mayor. The mayor's getting briefings and they can disseminate that information out. Champion the response effort. It's really, I found there's a hearts and minds piece that if the community feel that they have, they're being looked after and heard and they have trust and confidence in the systems at the time, their recovery journey psychologically is a lot better to the event. After the event has happened, there's always learnings and that's a good time to debrief. But if we appear fragmented at the time, it doesn't help that recovery. direct community members towards the right place of information, single sources of information. That's the trick these days. What's accurate, what's not. So please help disseminate the right information and therefore dispel rumours. Very quick one, who can declare a state of emergency? There is a list there. It's in what we call our group plan, which is our overarching strategic document. And that is a drop-down list, just in case we can't get hold of the person at the top. We just keep going down that list. But on that, the mayors can only, elected members and mayors can only declare the state of emergency. Once that's done, the controller has the powers under the Act to close roads, requisition goods, so on and so forth. There's some additional responsibilities. I've already covered that off. And then recovery.
Yes, so do you want to do questions for Joe now or at the end?
I'll do those 2 questions now. So I've got Kieran and then Celia and Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Joe and Riley, for coming in to talk about this. I hope this isn't too much of a leading question. I read in 3 of our responses, we've got initiatives that increase resilience for the council to support strengthening community connectedness, and also to be able to direct community to the right place to get support. As we are moving into discussions about community hubs and recreation centers, how important do you see those in terms of having a resilient place for people to gather before or after an event? We've mentioned Tapawera and their lack of a place to go. How important is it that the community knows where they can go?
Yes, so there's 2 aspects to that question, and the first is the need for those locations. The second is, do we advertise them? So there's just a nuance there. So if I cover off the first, as far as I'm aware, the building across the road there, which we refer to as a level 4 building, in terms of its construction, that it should have a level of operation post a sizable earthquake. That is one of very few in the top of the south. Getting buildings up to that standard is unrealistic economically throughout our Titaehu, really. Having said that, if we are constructing facilities that are community-based locations, and considering at that time the presence of electrical ports, so we can plug in generators if they do not have generators on their on a permanent basis, and or solar options, if we're considering at the time, that's just good decision making for the future from my lens. Part 2 there of, do we advocate those locations ahead of time? We don't. So across the top of the south, across Nelson Tasman, we have around 57 locations identified as potential civil defence centres or welfare centres. We don't advertise them ahead of time because we can only resource a couple at any one time, and also we don't know if they're going to be damaged post an emergency event, and we don't want people leaving what is essentially a safe location, being their house that they're familiar with, to cross hazardous terrain to get to a place that's not open. They just might not have electricity at home, but it doesn't mean their house is unsafe. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Okay, Celia and then Dean, and then we really do need to move on.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a really important topic, and to be rushing through this does seem, to be slightly counterproductive. I understand it's got a slot of a certain length of time, but I'm just would like to ask whether or not we're going to have some more.
So John can respond, but
that's actually, I've got another question, but that's something I'd like to get an answer to.
Yeah, so I'll let John respond, but on my response is that the information today is about our role as an elected member and not about the whole picture of where we sit with Joe and his team. We've already asked for another engagement with them and to do a site visit, but John can add further. So I'm mindful that today was about what is our role as elected members, and obviously some of the material they've provided takes our minds a bit further than that scope, and we are mindful that there is more that we can all learn. So we will set another time frame which isn't quite so shortened to
on that,
bring the more
just
through.
to follow on from that, the slide where you've got the structure and you've got Golden Bay, Murchison, St Arnaud, like there tends to be under, I don't know about Murchison and St Arnaud, but under there, like on that flow chart, there tends to be just a great big black hole. So you just mentioned about a lever arch file, which has got possibly some local groups that have organised themselves. I don't know who those are. They have not been communicated either to the community board or to the councillors. So maybe I need to talk to you later about that. But that is we've got a big communication problem. No one knows who does what. No one knows how to communicate, and it just turns into a bit of a dog's breakfast over there. So can we just, maybe I'll talk to you afterwards and we'll try and make a plan to actually get some more coherence and communication there.
Yes, certainly.
Dean.
Thank you. Good to see you. Interestingly, my question kind of follows on from Celia's. I just wonder, has there been I don't want to go into the details. I'm just wondering if there's been a fundamental change since the Picture Valley fires, the way things are structured and operate.
Not a fundamental change, no.
All right, if it's very short, we'll let
It's very short. It's really just clarification. If I read your line of command correctly about declaring a state of emergency, did I see that correctly? That if you can't get hold of Tim, then Nick will be in place to declare an emergency for Tasman before Brent gets involved. Is that right?
Correct. The agreed process is that the mayor of the most affected district, and then it's the mayor of the other district, then it's the deputy mayor of the most affected district, and then it's the deputy mayor of the other district. And then we go down to any other elected member.
Well, thank you. Do you have anything else that you want to share?
I do have a little bit, if that's okay at this time. I'll just rip through. But so recovery is when the operations go from over there back into the council. So that's where things start happening. And that is 95% of the time of an event is recovery. We do a lot of work on pre-planning for a response, but traditionally recovery has been the poor cousin. We don't do a lot of pre-planning. But my role is to start doing that for Tasman District Council. And so I can talk a lot more, and I'm happy to do that at another stage. I know we're short on time. But it's a very complicated stage. It's involves central government, it involves legislation, it involves funding from central government. It's a very complex time. It's a time when John, as the controller, hands over to Richard as the group recovery manager, and he has powers, and Steve Manners is the other one for Tasman District Council, has particular powers. I help kind of run the show in the background. It's organised in a particular way. I can talk to you all about that at another time. I think we need a bit more time on that. But just for you to know that in recovery, it's crucial as elected members that we sing from the same song sheet. You can give us amazing amounts of information from community and tell us what you're hearing on the ground. And then you can help be a voice, as well as our communications team, on what is happening and what people are allowed to do or not allowed to do necessarily. In terms of lessons, what you were talking about earlier, I'm also doing that from the previous recovery that was happening in June, July, and looking at the lessons from that recovery and building it into my pre-planning. So there's always that work. And also going to be looking across council to any reduction kind of work we can do to make the next recovery better and easier as a council and as a community in Tasman. And I was just looking at other things. I've kind of covered that. The other thing you'll get in your pack is what you can do after an emergency. And so there's some really good things about the legislation in there. and things that you can do. So I'm always happy to answer questions. You're always welcome to come and see me and talk about that or Joe. So that's the very short version of what I was going to say.
And the key takeaway there is cohesion and connectedness really helps our community. So if you're wondering what's going on, please don't hesitate to ask. We've got consolidated routes to do that. But if needs be, as Riley said, we're on the end of a phone as well. And there's a whole load of useful resources for you, and I've printed some of those off here. And I think we've covered off the questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Joe and Riley, for coming in. Sorry that we didn't have as long as potentially we could have had. So I acknowledge the information you've shared. You've obviously heard some of the feedback from our councillors, elected members, board members, and it is an action point for us to organise a time where we can do a site visit so that we can see, like, seeing is believing. It's in a phenomenal building and how it's set up. And it's good to see it when it's not in action, because, you know, I know that some councillors were fortunate to be able to get here when our last event was on and provide meals and walk around and support. And we're not all in that position, obviously, when we live a bit more rural. So an action point is to go and have a visit. The other part is that we'll get you back with a different time slot to give us some more of the answers that, you know, the valid questions that have been raised today. So thank you for our little takeout pack.
Thank you for your time.
Now we're going to reshuffle the agenda again, because I see that Barry and his team are available. So we'll put you back in the normal time slot. So for councillors, it starts on page 28, Environment Policy Quarterly Activity Report, brought to you by Barry and his team. Yes. What he might introduce them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Barry Johnson. I'm the Environmental Policy Manager here at Tasman District Council. For the new councillors, beside me is Jeremy Butler, who's the team leader of our urban and rural team, and Diana Worthy, who leads the natural resources team. So we're a team of about 14, nominally split down our TA and regional council functions. So Jeremy manages the TA functions in terms of environmental planning, and Diana does the regional council functions as well. So this is the first of our quarterly reports, update reports on environmental policy and our work we're doing. So I'll take the report as read, but I just note a few things that have happened in the last period, well, probably since the election, actually, since you were elected. So we've had a couple of plan changes that have come before you. So the Deferred Zoning Plan Change 79, you would have heard from Jeremy a couple of weeks ago. That decision has now been notified, so the appeal period's open for that. So that's a significant milestone. It's taken a couple of years or several years to get to that point, which is great. Our Plan Change 81, our big urban growth plan change, which will provide about 10 years worth of growth. We have been working with the Ministry of the Environment and the Minister in particular to get that across the line in terms of a streamlined planning process. You're aware that last August, the government introduced legislation which basically stopped all plan changes around the country unless you have approval from the minister. So we're hoping to get word from the minister in the next few weeks that will go ahead. So that's a really, really positive thing as well. We've recently had a hearing for a private plan change, and that decision will be coming to you next week for adoption. And probably the other significant thing is our outstanding natural landscapes technical study, which has been maybe 10 years in the making. It was finally completed, so that will be published very soon as well. So happy to leave it there. Is there anything you guys want to add to it? Happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. And Kit will be our first question.
Yeah, I probably know the answer to this, but some of the other councillors won't. So Plan Change 84, which is Korowai Puku Springs and water, we haven't had a reply, as I understand it, from the minister yet.
No, so we wrote to the minister in August requesting exemption from a plan stop, so we can notify that plan change. And we got a request for further information, which was provided in November. We haven't heard anything since then from the minister or the ministry, despite repeated requests for an update. So we're at the minister's whim, I guess you could say.
I have Mark next.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions. PC 81, you make mention of the fact the process is to be tailored and appeals can only be on points of law. So I'm just wondering, for the benefit of the public, what is their capability of participating in the processing having an impact, if any?
It's apart from that, the process is basically the same as Schedule 1 under the RMA. So it'll be publicly notified. There'll be a period for public submissions, and then there will be a period for further submissions after that. So we'll have to publish a summary of submissions, and then there's a call for further submissions. Following that, there will be a hearing. The Minister said that will be a hearing panel of 5 panel members. 2 of them will be appointed by the Minister, and that will involve a public hearing. And interestingly there, the Minister has said that there will be cross-examination allowed in the hearing, which is very unusual from RMA hearings. And part of that is probably because of the limit on appeal rights at the end of the process. So you can only appeal on points of law rather than merit under the Environment Court.
And do you have any indication yet of timelines for that, or is it still up in the air given the pending ministerial?
Morning, Councillor. We don't have an exact timeline when it's going to be released, but we do understand that the paperwork from the officials and the ministry who have been working on it have now sent their advice, their final advice, to the Minister. And I think that it was mentioned that, a couple of weeks, a few weeks, is the likely time frame for getting that that final direction. So what that will be is a final a direction from the Minister, which will then be gazetted, and then our time frames start. So we are eyeing a date of around 1st of May, possibly for the newsline for notification. Possibly if we can't meet that time frame, it might be 2 weeks after that. So probably early to mid-May is when we're looking at notification, assuming we get that letter from the Minister.
So ballpark dates for when people can, I suppose, prepare themselves for submissions and hearings?
Well,
I'm conscious that it's quite compressed.
Sorry, yes. So that will start, that notification starts the submission period. And we are also, as of just yesterday, we're turning our minds to a public engagement, a public engagement around to make people aware of it, make people aware of how they can make a submission, online webinars, in person. We haven't quite mapped that out yet, but that's what we're doing to make sure that absolutely everyone is aware that it's open for submissions. We've also, because it's had a long gestation period, we've got a very, very comprehensive list of people who are interested. So, of course, we'll be able to email them directly. So we won't just be relying on public notices.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeremy. Other question is, ONL, it's been parked. Is there any reason why we wouldn't be seeking an exemption from the stop for the ONL, given how long it has taken us to get this far?
That was a call that was made by the last council. What we do know is that technical study will be very, very important in the new system. So for spatial planning, regional spatial planning in particular, it will have a role in terms of constraints and limitations mapping, and then further in the plans that go underneath that with rules that will have an impact as well. So given what's coming, it's probably not, it may be work that would be lost if we went down that path. And I anticipate that if we did want to go down that path, we would probably get pushback from the Minister, given the timeframes.
Okay. Had to ask. Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We'll move on to Timo. Oh, sorry. Hold that thought. I jumped the gun. Celia first, then you.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. I just wanted to ask a question about freshwater and the fact that we, in the previous council term, we spent a lot of time going into the details about freshwater planning, and there's been, long process in Golden Bay, the flag process, and then with change in policy, government policy, it's been shrugged down to just a very small component of the work that has been done. So are you able to actually give an idea about where you think all that freshwater work that's just been parked, what's going to happen to that, and what the process is going to be? Do we know anything
bit of crystal ball gazing, because as you know, part of the legislation that came in August last year stopped regional councils from notifying any freshwater plan changes that related to the national policy statement, because they wanted to rewrite the policy statement. I think the work that's been done won't be lost. It will be a really important input into our natural resources plan. So under the new system, there will be an overarching regional spatial plan, and underneath it, kind of a district planning and a natural environment plan. So it will be an input for that natural environment plan, that background work. It's going to be really important, I think, because it shows the views or expresses the views of our communities. Timing wise, it's probably 3 to 5 years away in terms of getting that plan across the line, possibly longer, I think. But so it is unfortunate that we're in this situation, but crystal ball gazing, that's probably what I think. Yeah.
Sorry, another question. Is any work continuing, and what is being done to safeguard all that work that's been done up until now? Is it just sitting in a file on a computer, or?
We have parked it, so we were very careful to get it to a point where the work that was being done was complete. So we have essentially just parked it for now, except for those strands that are now part of Plan Change 84, which we really, really want to progress. But obviously, our hands are tied at the moment.
So would you say that it's a political decision maybe because there's a lot of players in the field as to whether or not there's going to be some movement on all that freshwater?
Yeah, it is.
Work.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're aware that the council decided at a council meeting last year in August, I think it was, to write to the minister to request an exemption for that freshwater plan change. Before we were able to do that, the Federated Farmers in Golden Bay wrote to the minister opposing the council doing that and opposing water conservation orders. Obviously, we have an associate minister who's an ex-Fed farmer chair, so I would imagine it's pretty political, and that's probably why we're not getting any traction.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good, Wendy. Look, I've got 2 questions. One about Plan Change 81 and one about Plan Change 84, and the latter flows on nicely from Celia's comments there. My question is, would it be helpful to have more political support for Plan Change 84 to signal to Wellington the importance of that plan change for our region?
Any political support is welcomed. Yes, definitely. The Mayor has spoken to Minister Bishop on more than one occasion around both Plan Change 81 and 84. But yeah, any political support would be welcomed, any further political support.
Are there any tactics that you could recommend, or is that something we should discuss with the Mayor later?
Talk to the Minister. Have a coffee, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, Plan Change 81, understand it's a massive beast. It's a huge plan change that involves a whole lot of things, some of which, of course, I tend to agree more with than others. But I do understand that the plan change was built on a growth projection originally that was very high, and that was kind of underpinned by what we have seen historically in our district. Yet, if this growth projection was to change, and it appears to me that we aren't quite meeting the growth that we originally anticipated. So if there was a fundamental change in our growth projection, is there an opportunity to feed that back into Plan Change 81 before finalising it?
I mean, it is based on those growth projections. We're saying it's 10 years capacity. Now, a lot of those sites that are in Plan Change 81 will be deferred, which means until there's infrastructure available, then they won't be available for development. So really, if it's 10 years or it turns out to be 15 years because growth slows, the real lever there is infrastructure provision to enable that land to be released. So that's the lever, and the LTP is obviously the critical thing there. So if there's no money, there's no infrastructure, the land can't be released. So that slows down land release in terms of what's in there. So whether it's 10 years, 15, 20 years worth of capacity, a lot of it is deferred, and that's kind of the lever in terms of when it would be available. But it provides certainty for developers. Developers know it's there, and it's there. So there's other funding mechanisms that come into play with that certainty of the land being zoned.
Yeah, sorry, subsequent one.
Sorry, just quickly just add to that. What Barry says is absolutely true for a lot of the greenfield locations. A lot of the brownfield intensification areas, because a very big part of Plan Change 81 is the new medium density zone. That will come into force, immediately, effectively. It won't be deferred. So it will provide for that intensification product, which is what we're looking for, of the smaller homes, compact, in existing town centres, more quickly.
Thank you very much, if I'm allowed. Totally agree with what you just said there about the intensification part and what we're trying to enable through Plan Change 81. Now, obviously, with a very high growth projection, you're kind of forced to zone more greenfield than you would have otherwise been in a position to do. So my understanding is from economists that if you signal to the market that even in the medium long term, more greenfield is available, that dampens the appetite to take up those opportunities for intensification that you would like to achieve. So in that regard, while I hear you that it doesn't get realised until we actually have the infrastructure in place to enable it, there is still a signal to the market that I wonder whether that's particularly helpful for what we're trying to achieve.
I guess briefly, that's not the advice we've had directly. So, and we know, Timo and I, we're aware that there's the difference of opinion there. But it's also relevant that we have a resolution for a certain scope of Plan Change 81, and I don't know whether pulling back, but and I'm not familiar with exactly what the growth projections are going forward. I mean, I think Jackie has presented to you on that.
So just at that point, I'm going to pause you because we are not in a workshop.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're probably moving into the train of something that is beyond an information forum meeting. And I see that Tim has his hand up. So sorry, but I will stop you there, Jeremy, and we will go to the Mayor.
Yeah, just to follow up the conversation around the conversation with the Minister. So my conversation has really been the government has a very big focus on growth and enabling growth, and is somewhat agnostic, I think, as to whether it's brownfields, greenfields, or a combination of both. They just want to see development and growth. My advocacy has really been, given that's what your primary objective is, having held up our Plan Change 81, which is exactly trying to provide for that for as long as you now have, those two things don't really gel that well. So I've just been trying to encourage the government and the Minister to effectively enable us to carry on with the process of getting the community's input. And then ultimately there'll be decisions at the end, which may or may not alter the scope once that process has been proceeded with. But at this stage, we can't even get to the starting point. So that's been the limit of my advocacy. We are now at a point where we've gone back with, my understanding is, further information. So they've come back. The Minister my understanding, Barry or Jeremy might be able to confirm. So they can effectively change the scope. So they might say, you can proceed with these particular things, or you can't proceed with this bit, or you can do this but not that, or this is the process you're going to run as part of that decision that the Minister has. So just to confirm that. And then coming back to the point that the Chair made, I think that we run a risk of kind of delving into the actual plan change conversation in this forum, which is probably not the right place to have it.
Plan Change 84?
Plan Change 84. Again, I think there's less certainty as to where that sits. Barry, I'm not sure. The conversations we've had is that we haven't had the same degree of interaction with the government via MFE or the Minister on where we sit with Plan Change 84.
Advocacy?
same advocacy. Yeah, there's key parts of that we really want to progress. There's some really key drivers for it, whether it relates to issues around Waimea water allocation, water quality management through the Waikoropupu Springs, Golden Bay part of the plan. Again, we've advocated for a decision so that we can all move on and get the community's input and work through the process. But less information about where the government's sitting on that than there is on Plan Change 81. And probably fits less into their areas of importance than the growth-related one.
Thank you for those points of clarification. I just have a couple of things from myself, and then we will adjourn for a coffee break if there's nothing further from Barry, Jeremy, or Diana. So for me, it's a Motueka master plan, and for the new councillors, so there was a whole heap of work that was done around the Motueka master plan, and it's a bit like what Celia was talking about with the fresh water and how much work's been done and where is that information collated and held, because often we sit in here and we go, we just need more information, there's gaps in our data. So for the record, Motueka master plan has had a heap of work done quietly behind the scenes, because we originally came to the table with what the CBD of Motueka looked like as part of that master plan, and there was quite a strong voice around this table that wasn't going to be big enough regardless of Plan Change 81. So we looked at whether we could push the master plan scope out, which included Mariri, and then we had some councillors who wanted to include Tasman, because that wasn't included in the Mapua master plan. So there has been a lot of work, there has been a lot of dialogue, and I know that we've had to pause that because we've now got a directive to do a regional spatial plan. But I guess I just want to make sure that everyone is aware we aren't working from a blank canvas, and that all the work that has been gone before us, before I was a councillor, and in my this is my third obviously term, that is collated and not lost. So I just want an assurance, Barry, from your team that that information is stored somewhere really safe, and then we start the work with the spatial plan, that we are including all the work that you've already put in, the fors and against, because we didn't come to a mutual place, obviously, of understanding we were all happy. But can we just have assurance that as per the fresh water work that was done, that work is not lost?
Entirely, yeah. You did right. We're not working from a blank canvas. And the work that we've done to date around Mapua and Motueka are really important inputs into what will be the next step in terms of this regional spatial plan as well. So it's there. Diana can probably add to that if you want, but we're still doing a lot of work in the background as well.
I guess the thing is that will the new councillors have access to that without wading back through minutes of our previous workshops / meetings?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, we've got a really stable team. We've got that kind of institutional knowledge, so we've got that continuity as well. But the information is very much stored in an easy accessible place and within our system. Yeah.
Did you want to add anything further? No. If there's no other further, oh, look at that. Timo,
I do apologise that I'm very interested in having my favourite people in the room. On the Motueka spatial plan, before we delve into a whole lot of nitty-gritty planning detail of, how the place could develop, and maybe that is what the master plan was supposed to achieve, but shouldn't we have a high-level discussion with the population about the risks that are affecting the town and what the options are for the town, whether, we mitigate the risks, whether we defend, the costs involved in that, the time horizon, how long we can actually follow that strategy, and what the alternatives are and the costs involved in the alternatives. To me, that is the very first question that we need to ask before we actually jump into the spatial plan for Motueka. And in a way, that is, in my view, a piece of work that we need to start almost immediately.
Oh, entirely. I mean, that's the first step is, what does the future of Motueka look like? And that's the first conversation we need to have with the community, outlining things that you've just set out. Is what does the future of Mott look like? Accepting all those things, all those pressures that it's got, and all those issues it has, and so that then leads into that discussion around adaptation planning and the costs and benefits and things. So yeah, entirely dead right.
So do we have a piece of work underway for that?
Yes, so that piece of work is exactly what I'm currently scoping out at the moment. So we'll come back probably to a council committee to discuss it further in the future.
Thank you.
Very good, thanks team. We are now stopping for 10 minutes. I'll see you back in here. Yes, I got your message, Kit, at whatever that time will be, 10:40. Thanks team.
Let's go.
Okay, we are going to invite Alan and Sue up to the table. Strategic Policy Activity Report. Councillors, that starts on page 35. Too sure what we've got on our screen.
Kia ora, through your chair. You'll start with me. I'm a poor cousin of Dwayne. Dwayne is back reworking our annual plan consultation document, which Alan should be up there too. However, we're going to take the paper as read, but I would like to highlight that on page 36 onwards, everything that we've said was on track is potentially at risk. So, you know, yes, take the paper as read. We will answer some questions if you have anything specific, but we do need to realise that everything that is currently marked green in corporate planning is at risk if we don't get a resolution on the 2nd of April.
Thank you for clarifying that. Is there any other updates from Alan? Nope. Okay, councillors, board members, has anyone got any questions?
Yeah, could you just spell it out a little bit more? Sorry, that was very cryptic.
The delay, they're at risk. So we marked the annual plan and long-term plan as on track because we were assuming that last week we would have an annual plan for consultation. We do not have an annual plan for consultation. We are working towards tomorrow to give you a reworked version of the annual plan for consultation. We then have the 2nd of April locked in for adoption from the elected members of the annual plan. If there is any delay to that figure, but those figures are green is currently amberish, but we can get it back on track, but we will have a shorter consultation period, but we will go to consultation on the day of the 2nd of April. So it will go straight out of here, straight into consultation. If there is a delay, we are going to miss that consultation mark with our community. That puts everything at risk, so they would turn to red.
And no, thank you. That was very clear, black and white, in fact. Thank you. Well, yes. That too. There are no further questions. Oh, we have Mike.
No, I've just haven't got a question, just a comment, but I like the layout of your presentation. Thank you.
I guess there's one question from myself. Sorry, just when you thought you could run away. So I'm on page 38 and it's a community occupancy policy, which is coming to us tomorrow. Just wondering, and I may have missed something, but have we in this term had an opportunity to understand what that policy is and any input into it? Because mindful that it is happening tomorrow. Can we have some feed on what that's and the timing of that, the background? Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, for you, Madam Chair. No, the short answer to your question, no, not in this term of council. We obviously had several workshops about it in the last term of council. So tomorrow's report will be the first time you'll get a chance to have a look at that and provide some feedback.
So for the report tomorrow, there'll be no decision made. It is a feedback session.
No, I believe there's decisions in that report.
Right. Okay. Joe.
I'm just, it's a bit tricky because it's in the other agenda, but having had a look at some of that, I'm quite keen on some more information of how we've gotten into that space. It's there's not quite the result that was discussed in workshops coming out of that. So it's a bit tricky to discuss right now. But yeah, maybe we can just a signal for tomorrow that we'll need some additional information perhaps. Thank you.
So signalling an action point is that there will be the need for some more clarity and understanding on the matrix that's being used. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. I could have spent longer on civil defence. I don't know. Okay, Jamie. So transport activity updates, page 48, councillors.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'm happy to take my report as read. Just noting that the format and content of the report that I've presented is largely in line with previous update reports that the Operations Committee would have received. So, yeah, that's the format we've run with for now. So, yeah, with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
We'll start with Kit.
Will we meet the new Downers manager who's going to be managing our roads soon?
Through the chair, yes. So Drew Hayes has left Downers now. He's gone to become the chief executive of the Nelson Marina. And the person who has picked up that role as Alliance manager at Downer is a guy, Matthew Sledmore, who has been involved with the Alliance contract previously. He was the regional manager when we first established the Alliance, so he's very familiar with it. And yes, he is currently working on a time to firstly invite the elected members down to visit the Alliance office, because that's a really valuable experience. You'll get a much deeper insight than simply hearing someone sit here and talk. But he will also come to probably the next information forum to do a presentation just like Drew used to. So, yes.
And Dean.
Thank you. Great report, Jamie. And certainly I've been getting some good feedback from the community about the current state of repairs being accomplished on our roads. And I just have a question about the fuel thing and how that's impacting us currently.
Yeah, I was half expecting that question through the chair. It's too soon to say. I mean, our contractors will be experiencing the diesel costs firstly. That'll be the most impactful thing today. What remains to be seen is what's going to happen to bitumen, which will affect us. We've largely finished our resealing for this current sealing season, so that's a good thing. Our next sealing season, we won't be purchasing more bitumen until later in the year. But, you know, all indications are, as has happened in all previous similar shocks to the economy, is that the cost of construction goes up a lot more than general inflation. So it's going to make it difficult to put together our long-term plan budgets. We're probably going to have to do some, you know, listing of assumptions to make sure that, you know, we've done the best we can to try and predict what the costs will be. But I mean, the nature of our Alliance contracts at present is probably the best way that the council can hedge its exposure to increased costs, because what we will end up doing is most likely reducing the amount of work we do to meet the the budgets that we have available. So it's not like we are locked into certain quantities of work and we just have to pay the inflated costs of that work, whether or not we want to. So yeah, we have choices. That's my point. We have flexibility, but yeah, certainly it's going to increase inflation. We have to get the work done eventually, so we don't know how long that is going to flow through for. Sorry, that's a long answer to say I don't know.
Okay, so we've got a few more people down to speak. There's myself, Joe, and then John. And I don't see anyone on Zoom at this minute. So Jamie, I'm looking just two parts of my conversation, the culvert work. Obviously had some active communication from some of our residents up Sunday Creek Road, and I'm sure that Dean's probably had similar conversations. When we've been out and done the culvert work and we've cleared them, have we done any replacement of culverts post the weather event? Because the culvert work in your report is just our general always programmed work. So Sunday Creek Road, and the other one is I've had contact from a lady up Maraho, which that culvert was quite a substantial culvert, and I know that that road hasn't been done yet. So does that mean that culvert is yet to be done? Then I have one other thing on transport.
Yeah, we are very carefully assessing each culvert. You know, when we come to address it, if it was damaged or blocked in the storm, we have a bit of a decision-making criteria, and that's a requirement of NZTA because they're paying for 81% of that work. So yeah, we're having to demonstrate that replacement, if we choose replacement, that that's the most cost-effective course of action, because NZTA will not necessarily want their money to be used to improve the network, that we can use it to reinstate the network, so that makes it challenging. So we are doing a lot of cleaning and a lot of replacement. So both of those things are happening. The big culvert on Maraho Hill, we've just been through finalising the design for that site, and so that one will be addressed as part of the current package that's going on up there. So that'll be finished in the next month or two. So yeah, I mean, there's no hard and fast rule with culverts, but you know, unfortunately, the storm has compounded, you know, our issues out there with. We already know we have a number of block culverts that we're trying to get to as funding allows. So yeah, it's a big challenge.
Thanks, Jamie, and big kudos for the crew that have been working out Sandy Bay Road. The photos that I've received are phenomenal. So yeah, thank you for that. And my only other question that I have, and then I've got numerous other councillors that I don't think I've forgotten you, is the road safety, you know, 6.1, there have been 9 serious and 1 fatal crash in our system. And I guess my question is, has there been any work that has been required for us post those incidents that we have to mitigate with regards to the quality of the seal, the road contour, anything that Tasman District Council is responsible for?
Short answer is no, we haven't. Typically, such findings might come through the police serious crash report, and those take some time to come through. Our safety engineer does go and have a look at these sites as we become aware of the crash, but there haven't been any immediate issues noted that we need to do any work for.
So obviously the report would come to you if there was something glaringly obvious that we needed to address on our end?
Yeah, typically if the police investigator believes that there are some road-related factors in there, they will bring that to our attention.
Cool, that's good to note. Thank you. We're going to move on. Joe, then John, then Mark.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie, for your report. Concur with the comments made earlier about the quality of our system. I mean, everyone loves to complain about our roads, but travelling around the country, I still think they are pretty good on average, and especially considering what we've been through in the last few months. Thanks for Tony's already covered some of my questions, but I just wanted to draw some attention to the trial regarding the dimming of the streetlights in Baidup Road. It sounds like quite an interesting trial, and there's a couple of things about it. So talking about the cost associated with sensors, I'm gathering there'll be a cost benefit analysis done regarding that, which is great. But I'm really interested in the effects that it has on light pollution as well, which is one of my bugbears. So will that be considered as we're weighing everything up with that trial? Will it only be on a cost benefit analysis, or will there be a place to see what difference that makes to light pollution if we spread it across the network?
Through the chair, it will be assessed purely on the cost benefit. Yep, the economics of that trial. I'm not 100% sure what is meant by light pollution. You know, in urban areas, you know, the lighting standards that we operate under, you know, require certain levels of lighting to maintain safety and whatnot of the transport system. And within that standard is giving regard to dark sky initiatives and standards. So the lighting we use is modern. It doesn't result in waste light or polluting light. That is light that goes places where you don't want it or it's not intended to go. So I mean, who judges what light pollution is, I guess, is up to the individual. So it's really hard for us to report on that.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks for that clarification. John?
Look, I agree with previous comments. The work you've done since the floods have been outstanding. A couple of questions. All the roads that we have, and we haven't repaired all of them yet, is it an intention to repair all roads previously serviced and or maintained, or will there be occasions up in the back and beyond where we will cease to maintain roads if there are very few ratepayers up there?
Through the chair, you know, I mean, that's a good question. The intent is to continue to maintain the roads that are on the maintained list. So there's no view to reducing the level of service as part of our storm reinstatement works. That kind of decision would need to be considered by the council through the long-term plan. That would form, I guess, a significant change to the level of service for some people in our community. So that would need to be consulted on and gone through that kind of process.
So supplementary, if I may, are there in little small communities only concerned about what happens immediately, and talk in the town that some of the roads that we have sealed in the past that have suffered in the storm damage will not be resealed but will revert back to gravel?
We don't have any sites that I can think of that are in that category. No.
Mark?
Thanks, Jamie. Just a quick question. I'm aware that Selwyn has laid its first rubber road, no bitumen. Could be quite timely given the pressures that probably will be on bitumen costs. Is TDC watching that with interest, and will we be also potentially exploring the opportunity to do that ourselves, especially if we're confronted with rather large bitumen costs?
Through the chair, yeah. I mean, we've got a small industry here in New Zealand, and everybody looks very closely at what others are doing. So yes, we've got interest in that. So what Selwyn have done, for those who aren't aware of it, they're using chopped up waste rubber tyres in lieu of the gravel chip that you would normally spread on top of a chip seal. And I'll just note that they are using bitumen, but they're adding some melted rubber into the bitumen which is something that we already do a little bit of. You know, there are different additives that we use in bitumen to increase its flexibility over time. Yeah, we'll get the results of Selwyn's trial. I believe that technology has been used overseas for a while. It does, you know, any different kind of treatment like that does cost more, and they've admitted that there's higher upfront costs. So we're all wanting to see what the results will be, but the problem is you won't see results for many years usually. So yeah, we're always open to innovations and would be crazy not to.
Yeah, so is there the opportunity for us to conduct a trial ourselves and maybe get the ball moving in terms of supply? Should we be confronted with probably what will be high costs for bitumen coming down track, I imagine?
No immediate plans. You know, the problem with running a trial is that you are putting some money at risk. And if we can benefit from someone else's trial without risking our own dollars, it might be the best approach. Okay,
I'm just conscious that if this does well, there's going to be pressure on probably supply channels, and we may be last off the list. But I just think we should be exploring this. It's been done internationally, so you know it's great that New Zealand have got on board. As you've already noted, I think international studies have shown that they work really well. So one hopes that we might explore this a bit more with a bit more interest. Again, the spin-off is, as I understand it, lower maintenance costs, the rubber lasts longer. This will probably be proved in the trial, but it's been proved in international studies. So I think we should be seriously looking at it. And I hope we do engage with Selwyn and make sure we maintain contact with what's going on. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I know that Richard Kirby's got his hand up.
Probably need to be careful of the long term, might be a short term gain, but in the longer term, 10 or 15 years down the track, all this rubber lying around in the environment, we probably need to be very careful about jumping to short term solutions to save money in the short term. It sounds like really good stuff, but I'm thinking of life cycle and what may happen in the future. It might cost us more in the longer term.
Okay, so we're going to move on now to Timu.
Oh, you got it wrong. You got it wrong.
Sorry.
Timo. I don't know. Well, first of all, I would like to applaud Councillor John on his line of thinking, and maybe this is something that we should consider in the chamber in the long run, the affordability of our service levels of our roading maintenance. But my real question is about some hearsay, and I don't want to relitigate a particular case, but I just want to see whether we have the right strategies in place dealing with this. So I've heard about a drainage issue on Haycock Road that we're dealing with quite extensive measures that kind of sit within the roading department, when apparently the issue could have potentially been more efficiently dealt with through stormwater management further upstream, where there's some kind of pond as the source of the issue. So when we are confronted with those sort of situations, do we cross-check with other departments in the council whether there's a more efficient solution to the problem?
Through the chair, I mean, any time we're confronted with a tricky issue like the one you're talking about, yes, you know, everybody gets involved, to put it that way. There are long and drawn out discussions amongst multiple departments. So I guess that's probably the easiest answer, yes.
Thank you, that's good.
Okay, Mike, then Joe, then Tim.
Thank you. Can't call you Madam Chairman, can I, Trinity? I'm looking at page 53, Waimea West Snowdon's Bush culvert. This has been an ongoing concern for a number of years, and just for other people around the table here, the issue is with DOC, not with TDC. So how could we, is there any way we can push DOC into performing, sorting out Snowden's Bush drain? Because it's starting to affect us and our ratepayers now, their inaction. Are we talking to DOC? What's the long-term strategy for solving our problem, which is actually their instigation?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I would totally agree with paraphrasing it as DOC's problem. Maybe there's something we need to talk more about just to get to the bottom of that. You know, the site that we repaired there on Waimea West had scour from the water coming up across the road. That's our culvert that goes under the road. You know, there were drainage issues all throughout that catchment, and whether or not you could attribute that to anyone's inaction or such things is really up for debate. You know, it was an extraordinary event, but I'm not sure we're talking about the same issue, so we'd probably want to catch up offline about that.
Okay, Joe.
Thanks. I'm fine now. I was covering the red light on the roads issue and some work that we've done about the chemical releases, but it's obviously being shared among departments.
Thank you for that. Tim, do you still have your hand up?
No, I'm all good. Jamie covered the issue with, Haycox Road, probably at least a decade that conversation's been ongoing. And over that time, it has indeed, as Jamie highlighted, pretty much involved every part of council. So if there is actually a solution being currently implemented, that's actually a good thing, because it is a very long-standing issue.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any further questions from anyone?
I have one. I have one, Chair.
Are you able to put your camera on so we can see you, please, Paul?
Yeah, I've got, I have it on, but it doesn't seem to be working. Don't know why. Yeah.
Great, you can keep going.
My questions pertain to paragraphs 3, 10, 11, 12, which is the sealing season. When I read that, I'm assuming the 6th of October start is the AP budgeted program. And it talks about we've got a program of 5.47% of roads will be sealed, giving the data, and then it discusses in 3.12 additional sealing, if I'm reading this correctly. My first question was, is this AP plan, does that flow through the LTP and we're basically budgeting 5% per annum across the 10 years? First question.
Through the chair, yes. We've budgeted to complete our target for the long-term plan at the moment is between 5 and 7% of our network resealed each year, increasing to between 6 and 8% in a couple of years' time. So yes.
Okay, so my next question was, we've got additional sealing because of the emergency, I presume. Yeah, that is in the 23 million that's been quoted in our reports, and we're told we have to rate it for 15 million. Could you just clarify the emergency resealing costs?
Yep. So we have some costs in our emergency reinstatement program to reinstate seal that got peeled off, by floodwaters. It's a relatively small part of that program. In the scheme of things, it's certainly less than 10% of the program. And that's being funded through the Emergency Works Fund. So Waikakotahi are paying 81% of that. So what I'm talking about in sections 310 to 312 is only the work that's being funded out of our usual maintenance and renewals program. So that 105,000 square metres of seal referred to in 3.12 is just addressing isolated cracking and waterproofing of previous patches around the network, separate to our 5.47%.
Okay, so your AP budget at 382, it's basically you're doing your normal work program in those chapters, and there's a small residual to address under the emergency sealing that you're managing. Can I just ask, the depreciation of road seal, is this information talking about, because it talks about lanes and then it talks about the road. When you talk lane, I'm assuming it's one side of the road. Could you just clarify that, and what time period do we depreciate the sealing over? Because it appears to be a 20-year program for the whole of the road, or is it actually 40 because we're only doing half?
The question about total length versus, or total kilometres versus lane kilometres. So that's the way we describe our network to our funder, NZTA. The reason being, some of our sealed roads are relatively narrow. They might only be 4.5 metres wide. So we consider that, even though it carries two directions of traffic, it's effectively one lane. Whereas a traditional road, like you might look out the window here and see Wensley Road or Queen Street, and that's, it's clearly 2 lanes with a line down the middle. So yeah, it can be a little bit confusing to think about things in those 2 different ways. But around the depreciation, so one of the issues that we've highlighted in our long-term plan currently is that historically we have not been resealing our roads at the same rate as they've been depreciating or deteriorating. And when I talked earlier about our need to increase our resealing from between 5 and 7% of the network up to 6 to 8% of the network, that is to help us get over the backlog of deferred renewals. So last year, for example, we only sealed 3.5% of our roads because that's the amount of money we had. So yeah, traditionally we would expect a chip seal to last between 10 and 20 years. It varies depending on the type of chip seal, how much traffic there is, but on a whole of network basis, we are behind the 8 ball with our resealing, and we do need to catch up, or else things will deteriorate in the long term. Now, I'm going to talk to you more about that in our upcoming LTP workshops. I've got much more information about that, which will help put that in context for you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. We'll wait for that.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any further questions. Again, thank you, Jamie, for your report and for the clarity that you've been able to provide to those questions from our councillors today. We are now going to move on to the Three Waters and Waste Management report with Mike. Page 65, councillors.
Oh, now I'm online. Good to go. Okay, I'm going to take the report as read and take any questions afterwards. Just got a couple of things to mention here before we take questions. The Motueka River Bridge pipe renewal was completed yesterday. So it's a job well done under very tight time frame, and so the team did well. So that's prevented all those minor leaks that we had along that stretch of the pipe. We've also had a lot of, and it seems to be increasing, water failures, predominantly to do with our AC pipes, which are aging, but also a few PVC pipes. In one day we had a break. I think it was Murchison, Richmond, and Collingwood, all on the same day. And we've essentially got one reactive team that deals with these to get around the district. So we're being pretty stretched in terms of that. This past week, we've had 3 breaks in Gladstone Road, 2 of them yesterday. One was noticed through the day. We didn't want to shut down the traffic and all the businesses through the day, so we deferred it until 7 o'clock last night. Came back online at about 10 o'clock, and another break, I believe, was identified, and they shut down again through until 1 o'clock last night. So that's the crew that we don't have available for work again today. So we have an increasing issue with our pipe failures. And so at the moment, we're working on our water services strategy, which is including a total review of how we do our pipe renewals and how we trigger that. We've got over the next couple of weeks meetings with my team leaders to review how we do that, and then that will be the outcome for the water services strategy on pipe renewals. We're facing some pretty high bow waves in the next 3 to 5 years for both water and wastewater. So we'll be reviewing things like the condition of the pipe, the type failure modes, pipe type, the defects map, the age, and also the information that we get from II investigations, CCTV, and leak detection. Of course, in the last couple of years, the budgets for all 3 of those have been cut quite significantly. So there's going to be significant changes in our renewals budget in the forthcoming water services strategy. And we need to be smoothing those out over those years as well. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take questions now.
We'll start with Dean.
Thank you, through the chair. So Jamie's just explained that we're behind the 8 ball because we haven't been renewing as fast as depreciation. So where are we at with the pipe situation?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
We have had so much deferred maintenance in the last 20 years or so that we just keep on pushing it out to fix to a budget level. Our water pipe renewals budget was increased from about 250,000 a year to $1 million a year 2 years ago. We've already spent next year's $1 million this year because of Fairfax Street. So we've got no renewals budget for next year at the moment.
Okay, we'll quickly move on to Kit.
Mike, interesting. Does the type of traffic going over it, like the number of large trucks, have an impact?
I believe the roads are designed for that. I know we've had issues locally with the buses, the new buses, and that's been resolved on Wensley Road. Generally, it's the depth that we now put the pipes at should cover that, provided they are installed properly. So we do watch very carefully how the projects are undertaken and the backfill is done appropriately. But we have a history of the ground taken out was thrown back over the pipes. So we're not only looking at the pipe material, age, condition, and the failure modes, but also where these have happened, because there's went from the old Ministry of Works, where they had very strict guidelines in that, and then it went out to competitive tendering, and it was the lowest price invariably in those early days got the contract, and that they dug out the stuff, put through the pipe in and buried it back with what was there. So there's a certain area that will start showing up with our defects maps that we do. We've got defects maps of failures for both water and wastewater for the past 30 years. And we'll be focusing largely on what are the pressure zones, because that has impacted on where are the areas where the groundwater is high. So it'll be a complete review of both water and wastewater. And stormwater, we just don't have any data with CCTV or anything like that. We've never had a budget to actually do those sort of investigations. We've got some in the next coming budgets. Yep.
Any further questions? No. Okay, John.
It's just bad news. That's what I thought out of that.
The quality of pipe that we put in, like what's failing now, which is 20 or 30 years old, is the quality of some of that pipe and some of the new pipe we put in up to scratch?
The new pipes, definitely. PVC's come a long way since the 80s when they used to get brittle failure. Same with PE pipes, the black pipes. They're pretty good nowadays, the modern stuff. But you go back before the 80s, any sort of plastic pipe. They took a while to develop. But our big issue is asbestos cement. They just, especially if there's certain ground conditions, they deteriorate. They also deteriorate from the inside with some of the more potent wastewater they get in the wastewater pipes. We just wouldn't use AC nowadays. But we've got, I don't know, probably 80% of the renewals in the next 10 years is going to be asbestos cement.
Right. Not something great to put to our small communities.
Correct.
I'll let you do that.
Thanks. I did already.
Could be part of your role too, just saying, John. Okay, Mark, you're next.
Yeah, two questions, but following on immediately from that one, you've identified a couple of 30-plus-year-old pipes that are breaking. I assume that our asset registry will indicate whether they're all the same batch or something, and that there might be potential risk of more breaking. Do we have an idea of that risk?
Yes, we do. We do have criticality analysis. It's something that has been done more recently, but again, it all requires data, and data is really expensive to gather.
So we know that we've got similar assets that have yet to break, but are of a similar age and batch. Is that what?
Correct. Yep, and that's what that bow wave is. That stuff probably should have been done already.
Yeah. So having an indicator of that financial risk will probably be added to the LTP discussion. I'm hoping. The other question I just want to get clarity around in the report, and it may be just use of loose words, but at 1.5, we're talking about the directive. It implies that council either has to do quarterly reports on effectively implementing barriers, and then goes either that or, which means there's a choice there, and then further down at 1.10, you're saying pretty much we're doing both. So I'm just trying to get my head around, is the directive we do or and why, if it isn't or, why are we doing both?
Well, the directive at this stage was to actually meet those deadlines that are already set, that we're working towards. Dovedale is slightly different in that the outcome that we're hoping for has taken time to actually confirm. We need another board to try and get to the levels, and if that fails, we then have got to look at direct abstraction from the Motueka River. That will extend the deadline. Well, we can't do it within the deadlines that we have. So we called Taumata Arawai about 2 weeks ago. We had discussion with them about the problems we were facing. They've asked us to keep reporting on it and come back to them with a plan of the immediate future, if we can get what the timeline will be, if we can get the fourth bore in, and it actually meets the capacity requirements that we have, or advise what the next steps are on how we're going to supply that water, and then what that sort of program would look like. They haven't said, if it goes down the current track, this existing deadline applies. If not, then we've got to explain to them what and how we're going to deal with that.
Madam Chair, can I just add to that? Another part to Councillor Greening's question was regarding the alternatives. The alternatives is point of use filters for Dovedale. Every domestic house having a point of use filter, that's the alternative. But unfortunately at the moment, Taumata Arawai's view is if there's a point of use filter, the council looks after them and maintains them. That's right. It can't be done by the local people. The council has to do it. And that's why we're kind of pushing away from that alternative. But that's what they're referring to in the directive. If you don't do what you're doing, you have to consider an alternative. And that's the alternative.
Thank you for that, Richard. And I know Mike's got something else to say. Then I'll come back to you, Mark.
Yeah, so the issue is, because we had the same thing on 88 Valley, it's not just a case of leaving it to end of point treatment. As Rich said, there, we are still liable for those treatments if they don't work. There's still a lot of discussion going around there because we're getting mixed messages from the advisors and some of the other people at Taumata Arawai. However, we still have to produce water to a standard that can be treated without domestic endpoint treatment, which means you still need a treatment plant. We've still got the similar costs. And all it does, it negates the need for residual disinfection, which is chlorination.
Yeah, I mean, it would be helpful if we could just see, because it sounds like you've got multiple tracks here of conversations with consequences, just for our clarity of where we are and in what track we're in, if that makes any sense. I think that would be useful, at least for me. I don't know about other councillors, exactly which track and what are the consequences and what are the choices. If that makes any sense, Mike.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can respond to that right back 12 to 18 months ago when we started the discussions with the Taumata Arowai, we did do a business case on managing 400 point of use filters in Dovedale versus a treatment plant, and the treatment plant at whatever, I think it's 2 or 3 million that we've got there is a cheaper option, both in the short and longer term.
Yeah, so I'm going to, what I was asking for is, in your discussion, and the points you've raised just now, to me, it's like there's a live discussion going on, and there's some options that the authority is still trying to get their head around, and we're trying to direct them to. It would be nice to understand that a little bit more in terms of this report, like the point of end filters. I'm still trying to get my head around where that's going and landing, or is that temporary while we do the bores, or are they expecting both? Like they want filters in place, and we want to know that you're exploring bores in 2 years' time. What's the timeline? Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around this.
So what Taumata Arowai have said, we've said that we're going to put a treatment plant in. Well, they require us to put a treatment plant in, a headworks treatment plant with a new water source. And what they've said, the alternative to that is point of use filters. It's not a combination of both. So the point of use filters, if we put them in and we just pump source water from wherever it is, the Motueka River or whatever, we pump it around untreated to all the houses and all the farms, and then it'll be treated. Or do we have to do some treatment first?
We can't. We have to still. There's a clause in the acceptable solutions that you've got to produce it to a certain level. And Humphreys Creek and the Motueka River, we cannot provide that level of water quality to meet a point of endpoint treatment.
Okay, so for fear of this going into, again, that space of a workshop, the action point taken from Mark would be that staff come back to us some more clarity around what that system looks like and what the risk factors are when we get to making a decision on which option may be applicable. Mike.
I understand there is a discussion at the meeting tomorrow regarding this very fact, with someone attending to discuss it. Kit, you might want to.
And again, I don't want to go into that workshop space, but Kit, do you have something that stays in our lane?
We've got a presenter coming tomorrow from Taumata Arowai, so to talk to us for about, I think he's got a 20-minute slot. It's the former mayor of Central Otago, so we've got a session tomorrow.
Perfect timing. Thank you. We will now move on to Celia and then Joe.
Yeah, stop me if I can't ask this question because it's not a topic that's actually in the report, but I've just got a question for information, and that is to do with water testing for drug testing, and the police in Golden Bay have asked for this to happen. We don't pay for it, but it would be just helpful information to know whether or not who pays for it, how it happens, just briefly, and whether or not council has any involvement at all.
Okay, this is a police thing. It is under their budget. Yes, they say they don't pay for it. We don't pay for the analysis, but they expect us to use our staff to go and collect the samples and deliver them. So there is a cost. So we haven't agreed to that, and we've agreed to Motueka because we could fit that in with our normal sampling. Taika is a lot smaller, doesn't have the same requirements because I think it's 2 weeks daily. We don't have the capacity to actually travel every day and take samples for them.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Celia. Interesting, isn't it? We collaborate with them, but we don't get any resources to do what we need to do to carry out part of the collaboration. Okay, Joe, did you redact your hand putting question? Okay, we'll move on to Timu.
No. Think of Tim and add an O. Right. Sorry, just one quick question on the Dovedale water scheme, just for me to get my head around. So in order to understand the viability of that scheme, we'd really need to understand options of bringing it up to standard, obviously, which council is working through. But do we actually have the option of disestablishing the scheme altogether?
That's a political decision. At the moment, I would say if we are currently supplying domestic properties with drinking water, we don't have the ability as staff to, if they apply and they're in there and they've got to keep going, it's up to them to decide whether they disconnect or not.
Is it something that we can investigate as part of our long-term plan discussions, service levels?
I'm not sure.
Yes, we could have those discussions. I mean, one of the options would be is that we provide stock water that have a prohibition on any domestic use of that water. That's an option that we could go to the community with. I have to say that the costs, because we've been ring fencing those Dovedale water supply costs, the costs are going to a point now where a lot of people are pulling out because it's just not cost effective for them to be on the water supply. I don't know what they're doing as an alternative. So there could become a point where, yes, it becomes unviable for everybody else. So because the costs stay the same, irrespective of the number of people in it. But yeah, that's a discussion for the LTP. Yeah.
Any further questions? Okay, so I just have a couple myself. Waste management, and I'm talking to number 7 on your report, page 78, with the curbside collection and how we're easing back from our busy summer period. Mindful that David's not in the room, David Stevenson, who I've had not multiple communication lines with. Do we do a debrief after a summer period to work out our highs and lows and the level of service and the feedback we have received from our community? And in particular, I'm talking about Little Kaiteri.
Not with the community, but certainly the team themselves. We have a monthly contract meeting and we review the past month's performance, levels of service. We've got KPIs for what they do and are they meeting those KPIs. But generally, we don't go back to the community on that. That's for the annual customer survey and the RRC surveys that we do as well through the summer months. But no, other than those, and of course through the annual plan or long-term plan consultations. But no, we just report basically on the contract itself and how that performance is going.
Okay, thank you for that. Because it's, for me, it's not the level of service per se. It's just the system that's been put in place, and we're talking mainly about Airbnb, their responsibility. So when you have you rent your space out, you provide, rightfully so, the Tasman District Council bag. And the rules obviously for the tenancy is that, be it short term, that you place the bag at the bottom of your drive or in a collection point when you move out from being in there. And then, you know, the cleaner comes in, sets it up for the next tenant. But that bag may be dropped out there on the curb on a Monday afternoon after our truck has been around Monday morning, and that bag potentially has to sit there until the following week's collection because that's the level of service we all agreed on. And then we have major problems with rodents and other things happening. So we've had a lot of cons, and I'm wondering whether there is a point where we actually do a debrief around what worked, what didn't work, because often it's not Tasman District Council's level of service problem, it's a communication problem with how those houses are used. So I'm quite keen to make sure we don't have a repeat of the amount of time and energy it's taken from us councillors and also from our staff moving forward. So if we could at some point include that somewhere in one of our briefings, that would be very helpful. And the last thing I wanted to know is, you know, listening to today's conversation, particularly when it's come to the roading with Jamie and yourself with the waters, the importance on the weighting that we put in for our pre-work and the work going through for our long-term plan, that, you know, we've heard today about the Bellwave We've also heard about what we can and can't and haven't been able to do, how we've sweated our assets, and that sometimes, you know, that's all we can do at the time, but there's unintended consequences from the decisions that we make. So I'm hoping that when we move into this next phase, and I'm sure on the 1st of April, when we get our first long-term plan financial workshop, that there'll be elements in there which clearly states what the risks are if you choose option A, B or C. I don't believe there's any other questions for today, but I do want to thank you for your report, and I do want to head that conversation about the importance of where we go with our long-term plan discussion. So thank you, team. Thank you to my sound crew over here, the desk people who, you know, make sure everything ticks along perfectly. And for our ELT team who have come today in the media. And I'm going to ask if Karen can close with a karakia.
Thank you, Trindi. So kia hiki te kōrero, kia wātea, kia mama te manoa o te tangata, kia u ki te ara mo tātou e ora nei, ko ronga ki runga, kia tina, huie taikie. Let the discussions be lifted, clear away and ease the hearts of the people. Keep focus on the path of life. Peace is upheld. Say yes, bind together, and so it is.